and let us all do we can to build a better future.
Speaking of monopolies and all that, and this is an article, this is right out of the Washington Post by one of their specialists there. So what's been going on is if there has been in Congress some bills, some antitrust legislation aimed at technology companies, specifically that would not allow tech companies to give preference to their own apps on their platforms and that sort of thing. So, and this is flag waving at its finest. The tech companies are now arguing that if these bills go through and they're not allowed to give preference to their own apps and boost their own apps on their marketplaces and platforms, that they won't be able to censor RT and Sputnik.
Oh, well,
so there's flag waving. It's flag waving, yeah. Okay? In fact, this is coming from the Chamber of Progress CEO, Adam Kovacevic, which is basically saying that he argued that the proposals would limit the ability of companies like Google, Apple, or Facebook to take action against Russian state media outlets like RT and Sputnik. The pressure that big tech platforms have received to remove RT and Sputnik shows that most people want platforms to curate for safety, security, and community standards. But these bills would undermine that curation. Now, here's the problem. Here's the issue. The bills actually don't allow this at all. Foreign state media and companies that are under investigation or whatever, they cannot take these acts. The bills specifically provide for the ability to remove things that are potentially dangerous and that sort of thing. These tech companies are being totally disingenuous, but think about that. And they're actually getting on the bandwagon that people in the United States need to be protected from ideas and information. And people are just embracing this. People are embracing this. This is what's been going on. It's been going on for a while now, but we're just seeing it in stark relief at this point because, we have to be protected. We have to be protected against ideas we don't like. We have to be protected against propaganda. And the nightly news isn't full of it?
Well, the nightly news is filled with
And where were all
BS.
these people when Rush Limbaugh was doing his conservative talk radio revolution? He made people angry, but people were not, we're not basically calling him an enemy of the people and trying to seek legal means to take him off the air. Mm-hmm. I mean, this, people have been okay with the idea of free speech in the United States for a very long time, and now all of a sudden they're waving their flags because of the big bad Russians. And I think it's very convenient that basically everybody alive now, of everybody who's alive or is alive, either was born during or after the Cold War, and many of us were around when the Cold War was raging and the Russians were bad. And I remember Sting had a hit song in the early 80s. And it was supposed to be an anti-war song or an anti-Cold War song, but he'd say, talk about destroying the world and what a terrible thing to do if the Russians love their children too. And people in the U.S. were saying, well, do you think the Russians love their children? Yes, people were having that discussion at that point because we had so demonized these people over there. But it becomes very useful to use this kind of language about another nationality, another country. Because we have it in us. We were indoctrinated on it. We grew up with this.
This might seem a little humorous, and Daniel will get the reference, but I can't help but think with all this rage of censorship, with all this need of silencing different perspectives and points of view, and let's face it, in this day and age of media, it's important for us, even here at Hard Lens Media, to see different perspectives and points of view so we can get the full story. It's not just black and white. It's not a Saturday morning cartoon, but why can I not help think of the end credits from Medieval 2 Total War when the woman is singing about, of course, the different factions, and she's saying, do they care about their children too?
Yeah.
I don't know that one.
You never got to the end of the
Oh, I
credits?
did. I just don't remember that.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well,
We have our guest coming on a little bit, but I did want to mention this. A small radio station in Kansas City, KCUR 89.3, broadcasts Radio Sputnik for, I think it's 5 or 6 hours a day. They pay the station about $5,000 a month. It's what's keeping this station going. And we all know the importance of keeping radio stations and TV stations going in areas. It's one way to keep information democratic. They've made no bones about the fact that Radio Sputnik is a Russian channel or a Russian network, and the programming is going to be pro-Russian. However, this station is now essentially under attack by members of the community. And what is even more disturbing at this point, the chief executive of the National Association of Broadcasters has called on all U.S. broadcasters to cease any state-sponsored program with ties to the Russian government. And the chief legal officer of the National Association of Broadcasters, Rick Kaplan, has said it's an extremely unusual but necessary move because Radio Sputnik is nothing more than propaganda spreading misinformation from a foreign government. Now, look. This is the National Association of Broadcasters. They claim to champion free speech. They are calling for the end of broadcasting because they don't happen to like the content being produced by a state media channel. If this doesn't frighten you, I don't know what will or what will shake you out of what is going on here. I do not, and I will make this as clear as possible. I've said it before, I say it again. I oppose the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Period. I oppose it. It was wrong. It should not have happened. Ukraine is a sovereign nation, should not have been invaded. If they have internal issues, that needs to be dealt with internally. And that's as far as I'm going to go with this. But the idea we're now picking on independent broadcast businesses for having a business model which has for a long time relied on brokered programming, that kind of thing, and picking on them for disseminating information when people can always turn off that dial. This is where we're at right now. And I do also want to mention one more thing before we bring our guests on. We'll do a quick comment. What we do know also is that Mozilla has essentially Firefox version 98.0.1 has one big change. It has removed Yandex and Mail.ru as custom search engines. They're being redirected back to Google because Mozilla doesn't want Russian search engines that might have, Russian disinformation available to people who want to use its browser. It's not a matter of being able to make choices anymore about where you get your information. It's that those choices are being removed for you.
Basically, what the government and big tech and corporate media is telling you, our audience, and everyone in America, that is, you're not smart enough to make your own decisions. You're not smart enough to digest information, so we're going to tell you what you need to think. Now, I, for one, find that extremely offensive because I'm an advocate for free speech and for free thinking media and for every other individual, including our audience, to make up your own decisions, your own minds, because that's how society should be. We should all have our different perspectives and points of view, and we should all ascertain the information, absorb it, and make our own judgment and opinion, and not have somebody say, no, that's not right, and thus your thoughts are meaningless. That's not how it should be. And when we give you guys this show here at Heartlands Media, we basically expect all of you to absorb the information and for you all to come up with your own individual conclusions, as you should as free individuals, because let's face it, we need to have a free society, true independent media, and free thinking media so that people can actually have a conversation and debate the ideas and the current situations that are taking place here.
So, America is saying a number of things right now. America is saying that we don't have a good point. Our arguments are bad. because the only reason that one would be scared of anything coming from Russia in terms of media is if it was better than the arguments we had. Now, I think in this case, I agree with Laney, not a good idea to invade Ukraine, bad on every count, bad of us to help push them in that direction, but it's doubly bad when you actually start shelling civilians, doing all those other things that Russia is currently doing. But it's really pathetic on the U.S. point of view to say, hey, how many people, like before this all happened, how many of us out there were really like listening mainstream to Russian news all the time? It's a very small percentage of people to start with. So because they're worried, I suppose, which I don't think is a real issue, and I'll get to that in a second, that they're worried that people will be convinced to turncoat against America if we allow free speech to happen. I don't think that's what they actually care about. I think that we're just in the process of setting precedents right now. And another thing that we're doing is by separating America from Russia and the civilians from each other, all we're doing is making us ignorant of each other. Ignorant leads to fear, fear leads to hatred. And so we're more likely to be in conflict with them if we're not talking together. Just the same way we've seen on social media. It's just another bubble set together another way. And why are the tech companies doing it? Because the government has realized and has realized for a while now that, well, at least in the U.S., you can't directly go against free speech, and as much as they're talking even on radio right now of doing that. But if you control the social media accounts, you can get around that amendment because they're private companies. And so we're watching this precedent of taking away the First Amendment, and as perfectly American as it is, watching the citizens of America cheering on the destruction of its own constitution.